Okay, once again, I forgot to start the recording when our session began, so I'm shoehorning this one section in with the other portions of last week's session. Um, what we're doing this week requires some historical imagination on the part of uh, most of my former students. Uh, we've lived so long with fundamentalists and evangelicals really flexing their political muscle. It's popping up again with the Southern Baptists. Uh, it's important to realize that for a very, very long time, they really steered clear of politics. They eschewed politics because uh, they were the outsiders. Political positions were held largely by folks who were in mainline Protestant denominations. Think Episcopalians, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Methodists, uh, all of whom had a fair amount of distrust of Southern Baptists and other fundamentalists and evangelicals. Uh, so you would not bring up politics because it might furnish a basis for those mainline Protestants to tyrannize over you, to enact policies that would harm your interests or your beliefs. That changes with Ronald Reagan. Um, More specifically, Paul Weyrich, who helped run his campaigns and saw bringing uh, those fundamentalists, those evangelicals, into the Republican fold would help them build a really strong coalition. Um, if you take a look at the Republican Party platform in 1980, you can see that they're trying to combine a couple of things or find a way through some difficult issues. They clearly wanted to unleash the private sector and enable individuals to do whatever they wanted to do and to minimize the amount of government interference in our lives. To repeat the slogan of a previous episode, the object was to get government off the backs of the American people. But that was a really um, sort of chaotic force that you were unleashing, and there was at least some understanding that you needed also to have something that brought people together. Um, and the thing that they wanted to have bring people together, I mean, families, but also churches. Um, if you remember from a previous episode, Kerry McWilliams talking about the outcome of the 1980 election was extremely dubious uh, that those forces tied to the church, families, were going to be adequate to hold things together once you had thrown everything up in the air with that sort of libertarian approach to governance. Um, but certainly people think of churches as forces that bring people together, that provide some social cohesion. Um, so what about how that was going to work? Well, the key actor at this point in time was Jerry Falwell. Jerry Falwell was leading a faction of Southern Baptists. It's important to remember that you don't want to treat, honestly, any denomination as monolithic. There are going to be factions, disagreements, schisms um, within any denomination. But he was a very influential one, and he formed the group called the Moral Majority. The joke, of course, was that in protests, one of the chants would be, the moral majority is neither. When it comes to Jerry Falwell, he's profoundly hypocritical. It's hard to imagine being more hypocritical, but I'm going to refer you to what I thought was a famous photo of his son, who became president of Liberty University, one of the institutions we're going to talk about in a second, and his wife, a picture taken of the two of them with Donald Trump in Donald Trump's office, and immediately behind Falwell and his wife is a framed picture of a cover of Playboy. So the forces of morality posed with Donald Trump and Playboy. All right, let's get to the father, however. Falwell was energizing these forces because there was discontent on their part with a couple of different things. One, very straightforwardly, they opposed civil rights legislation. It's pretty clear that in any meaningful terms, Jerry Falwell was racist. He opposed any of that legislation. In fact, I'm going to add this. It didn't happen in the actual session, but back at that time, there was some civil rights legislation that was going through Congress, and on Jerry Falwell's program, the 700 Club, at one point, 3 individuals on camera were holding hands and praying for the defeat of this particular civil rights bill, and one of them happened to be an African-American male. Opposed the Equal Rights Amendment as well. Maybe most importantly, he was very, very angry about the Supreme Court withdrawing tax-exempt status from Bob Jones University. And the reason they withdrew that tax-exempt status was that Bob Jones would not accept African Americans. And Liberty University, Bob Jones University, Liberty University, Hillsdale College, Patrick Henry College, there's a group of these fundamentalist Protestant colleges that could be affected by that. So I'm going to make a distinction here. There are fundamentalists and evangelicals. Fundamentalists adhere to a literal reading of particular portions of the Bible, not the entire thing. There's a famous episode of West Wing where the president mocks a woman for this literal reading of the Bible. Evangelicals, not on the other hand, there's a lot of overlap. Evangelicals want to evangelize. They want to bring people into the church. One of the things that occurred during the 80s at St. Mary's College was I have a number of students. The student body was much more white, much more well-to-do, lots of fans of Ronald Reagan. So they would major in political science, back then it was called government, go on Washington semester, catch Potomac fever, want to go back to Washington, D.C. and serve in the Reagan administration. And I warned them that, and they were all Catholic, there just weren't that many non-Catholics at the college at that point in time. I warned them, when you go to D.C., these folks who are fundamentalist and evangelical are going to attempt to convert you. And by God, every last one of them came back with stories about efforts made to convert them from Catholicism. Sometimes very aggressive attempts to convert them to usually Baptist. What this means is that the approach to religion within the Reagan administration was to have guidance from those evangelicals and fundamentalists, and to stigmatize those who did not hear to that moral code. This was really, really clear during the AIDS epidemic. For starters, Reagan didn't even acknowledge the existence of the epidemic for 4 years. If you think about the toll in terms of human lives, that's mind-boggling. And it took him 2 years longer before he had delivered an address on the topic. The Christian right was, when it was speaking most prominently, would declare that AIDS was a divine verdict issued on the immorality of homosexuality. And I provided this. And there are plenty of reasons that Pat Buchanan is an appalling human being. This is one of them. When he talked about the epidemic, and he was Reagan's White House communications director, he said, quote, "The poor homosexuals, they have declared war on nature, and now nature is exacting an awful retribution." Reagan didn't personally have any animus toward individuals who were afflicted with AIDS. After all, there were plenty of, or homosexuals. After all, there were plenty of folks in Hollywood who were gay, and that was okay, as long as he had that kind of familiarity. Making that point, it took Rock Hudson's death from AIDS to really push the administration to respond to the crisis. Another place where you could really see their impact, and this is the beginning of a huge campaign to criminalize abortion, and that has to do with women's reproductive rights. One of Reagan's first legislative accomplishments was in the Adolescent Family Life Act. And that's included in the Omnibus Reconciliation of 1981. So it's the first budget that's coming through. And to make it easier to get through, they've piled a number of different issues into it. Instead of focusing on contraception, they embraced abstinence-only education. And abstinence-only education was really based on that fundamentalist belief, their moral code that recognized sexual intercourse as only acceptable within the context of heterosexual marriage. Anything outside of that was sinful, and the government shouldn't really allow that to occur. And for a great while, abstinence-only education was something that was really at the center of where the Republican Party was going to address the AIDS epidemic, abortion, sort of, you name it. Everything was going to be cured, addressed in that way. It's how that empowerment of the Christian right harmed the organic constitution. That's your essay question. And I think that you have some of it all already.
I mean, that, I guess my stance would be to take on that, the separation of church and state on that, in terms of the Constitution, right? And the harm that it does when a seemingly religious organization wants to come in and dictate how to interpret the laws of this land, and have it be interpreted in a way that's going to directly benefit them, and to the hell with everybody else. But maybe I'm being too broad. Maybe you're looking for something more specific.
Well, and you guys have to stop. I'm not looking for anything, man.
Thank you. I don't ever want to say something and you go, oh, Lord, have you learned nothing, Laura?
Jody and I have been talking about this. And I'm like, there's only one time, the entire time I was at St. Mary's where I did that. And I don't know why you clowns keep thinking I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to tell you guys what it was, but I told Jody what it was. And he went, what the heck? Yeah, we got one thing here. This is the Christian right, because Therese is coming late there. The references that you want to take a look at are The Moral Majority and Jerry Falwell. And there is, I was a little sloppy about this just because I didn't clarify things. The group that I think is, there are two ways of characterizing the Protestants who might be affiliated with the Christian right. One is the fundamentalists, and those are the ones who want to do a literal interpretation of their favorite portions of the Bible, okay? And they're the evangelicals. And there's a lot of overlap, okay? They're not the same thing. Didn't you have John Pauley for a communication studies class?
I know who he is, but I mean, yeah.
Absolutely evangelical. Absolutely evangelical. Not fundamentalist at all. Okay, so they're not.
Yeah, I would never have thought of Dr. Pauley as being evangelical.
He's a Baptist minister.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was absolutely assiduous in not bringing that into the classroom.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, I have a lot of communication major friends who talk not that you wouldn't talk highly of them, but never once have, and right. All the times they've talked about him, have they ever said, "Oh, did you ever know?"
Yeah.
You know, that he was a Baptist minister, so I do think that he probably kept it out of his students.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So anyway, this is just to characterize for Therese because she wasn't here at the beginning.
Yeah.
And also to clarify for you guys, because I used the terms appropriately when I was talking about the various things that were being done. But I probably should have been clearer in the way that I did that. So when I told not really stories, but related what happened to our students who were Catholic who went there, it was absolutely the evangelicals who were the ones who were attempting to convert them. Okay. But the moral fervor came from the fundamentalist part of that group of Protestants. Does that make sense and help clarify things a little bit? Okay.
Yeah, it does.
I want to get to Laura's thing because I think that you had an even stronger point earlier, and you presumably, as part of the organic constitution, you don't want to nourish a disrespect for the Constitution. right? And the way that you're describing it, which I think is perfectly valid, does exactly that. It
Yeah.
says no, it's okay to have the government establish a religion. Well, no, it's not. If you undercut ordinary citizens' belief in what's actually in the Constitution, you're harming the organic Constitution. You're also violating the norms that elites should follow. You shouldn't be doing that. You should have a commitment to the country. You should be more public spirited. You shouldn't be looking at just building an election victory and accomplishing your particular aims. You should care about the Constitution. You should care about the well-being of the country, and that's not doing it. Yeah, go ahead.
Also curious about this idea of individualism, right? When you talked about that at the beginning, and the correct me if I'm wrong, the fundamental Christian right and individualism kind of go together, and that was sort of presented to Reagan, and he kind of championed that. But the word,
Yeah,
well,
sort
that's,
of. Yeah.
but, or accepted it, or took their money
Yeah,
and
yeah,
said,
yeah.
sure, let's do
He took their
something,
money
you
and
know.
yeah.
Used it for his own purposes.
Yeah.
The word individualism to me seems so opposite again of what this country is and the Constitution is, because it's not about, and maybe it's about individual freedoms in some regards, right? Freedom of speech and this kind of thing. But we're also looking at what we can do in this country to better the whole, not just better the me.
Yeah.
Right? And
Yeah.
so they seem so contradictory. And maybe it's just the word that I'm having a hard time getting over. Just the word of being, an individualist, which
Yeah.
to me feels so much like, what can you do for me? What are you going to give me? What power can I get?
Yeah. And you,
To the rest be damned.
yeah. So you'll want to look at last week's episode when I finally managed to get it out, because
Okay.
that's what we're dealing with.
Okay.
And that,
I look forward to listening to it.
well, I actually recorded the whole thing, so you get the whole thing. And that goes on steroids now with all of the tech bros, because that's a real hotbed of libertarianism, because that's what you're really talking about, is libertarianism. And so I think that will sort of get at what you were addressing there, and like, yeah, I mean, that's, and it's where Terry McWilliams is coming from, saying you need more than that. You need more than just thinking that the best part of this country is that every individual can do whatever they want without government limiting their actions. I'll sneak this in here. His dissertation, which was published as a book, is a big old honking book. And if you enjoy reading about literature, it's he may be the smartest person I've ever met, and certainly one of the most beautiful writers. It's the idea of fraternity in America, and he goes through a bunch of, major earlier American writers, Melville, Hawthorne, folks like that, to pull out elements of fraternity being addressed. That this is part of being an American, is this idea of fraternity. There's no way I can adequately communicate to you how incredibly important that was to Carrie. He sort of devoted his life's scholarship to looking for those elements and trying to bring them forth. It's a beautiful book. It's not clear that he's right. It's not clear that you can find enough of that idea of fraternity to sustain us. And the little nutshell thing. Those of you who were here last week already got this, but was another one of my profs, Gordon Shockett, who's a scholar of British political thought, asking a group of us graduate students, so why do we celebrate the nation's birthday on July 4th? He didn't finish it up, and I was too stupid at the time to realize where he was going with it. But the answer should have been, we celebrate the nation's birthday when the nation's actually born, with the ratification of the Constitution. That's when the country's born. Declaring independence from Great Britain is not when we became a country. It's just when we rebelled. Individual freedom. So, and we celebrate July 4th. We call it Independence Day. It's not, America's Day, or it's Independence Day. You don't have to listen to anybody. You can be completely independent. It's not a flattering way to think about the country, and that's kind of what Gordon wanted to get across. That's how infantile we are. We don't realize that if you're going to have a nation, you actually have to have governance. You have to have institutions. You have to have a constitution. You have to have laws.
Because if you don't have those things, where does that independence leave? Like, is it just like Lord of the Flies? Like, we all just kind of survival of the fittest? Like, is it just pure Darwinism at that point? Like, if you don't have the Constitution and the laws that limit what humans can do to other humans, right?
Yeah. Well, now you might want to put that together with sort of the way that fundamentalists wanted to think about right and wrong, and putting that into effect for the state. Yeah, and that then becomes sort of your sort of positive governance, but it's not what the framers intended. Not at all.
You go back, the language, the inalienable right for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness is such a subjective term. I'm not questioning the framers because I'm not as smart as that. I just want to be clear. But, then it turns, in my mind, it's a question like, what if my pursuit of happiness conflicts with yours?
Right.
And then, who's right?
Yeah, and that's the old John Stuart Mill thing about the approach to freedom.
I think everyone should just leave it, I'm not a libertarian, but I appreciate, and I feel like today's libertarians aren't really actually libertarians. I think they're just like fancier Republicans, but
well, they're certainly different from older Republicans, from last time. And libertarians wanted to legalize marijuana. They're perfectly okay with abortion rights.
They were. Are they now? I admittedly have to see what Rand Paul's position on abortion is, but
abortion isn't the issue that's driving any of this right now. I certainly sympathize, and I understand that for women, you have to feel like you're in great danger now, and it's largely at the state level. That's where that's happening, and that's what they're talking about. We're just leaving things to let the states decide how. But in terms of national politics, that's not really driving much of anything that's going on. You don't see that popping up. It's a whole lot of it's a whole lot of other issues.
But if the freedoms are given to us at the federal level via the Constitution, and now with the fall of Roe, abortion rights are decided state by state, then the Constitution is not working because women, depending on where you live, have different rights.
Well, but that, I mean, you can say that about, there's a whole lot of state legislation. I mean, it's
No, yeah.
as part of the Constitution, you're setting up a federal system, and so they're admitting that you're going to have differences in state laws, and then it's folks thinking about, okay, when are interstate kinds of issues important enough, meaningful enough, we need to have federal legislation so that it's a level, I hate this language, but a level playing field across all those states, and everybody gets treated the same way. So you can have those differences.
But which rights are or are not fundamental? Like
Well,
who's
right.
deciding that my right to choose or my right to health care as a woman can be limited based on, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I guess I could pick up and move, but that's also not a realistic option for a lot of women. I mean, so I to your point, as a woman, I do take this a little bit personally because I feel
No,
like
you should. Yeah. No. I mean,
We all should.
I'm just, yeah.
I have two
Sorry.
daughters. I mean, one's in Sweden, but still, and I have all of you guys, that I care about.
Teresa's made some interesting points on the chat, and I would be curious to kind of,
Yeah, part of
if
it
she
is
feels
just-
comfortable talking, to the group, just hearing more
Yeah,
what
right. Therese, you want to do that? Or you want me to just address it?
Oh, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Just going back to the Christian rights and what's the baseline for having a moral code, and if, as a society as a whole, we have to interpret today what was written hundreds of years ago, if those people are elected, and if they're elected by a majority, and the majority happens to be fundamentalist Christians, and they actually see it as a central tenet of their religion to convert, to say, are you accepting Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, however the statement goes.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Something like that. I'm not a Christian, but if that is the central tenet of somebody's religion, there are other religions that also have a specific understanding that all society at large should live by our moral code, but they're just not. They just don't happen to be the majority right now. If they were the majority, and then maybe something were to totally shift in a different direction.
Yeah. So let me.
Over time, things can change just based on what the majority of the U.S. voting population, specifically voting population, wants.
Yeah.
And I think that, in a way, it's this kind of odd juxtaposition to say, well, everybody has free exercise of religion. Okay, but if a central tenet is to then tell other people this, that, or other thing they need to do because maybe they have a lack of what let's say the Catholic Church understanding of free will, right, is, I feel like that kind of makes it a little harder to find that moral baseline that all society can work within. And I think that when we start seeing maybe certain things discussed more at the lower levels, you're going to have these differences between what maybe we say what rights somebody has among this specific population and what rights somebody has among this other specific population, because there will be a minority group that always is going to exist somewhere that's not a completely homogenous society, city, county, whatever. And I think that kind of that's where all those arguments end up happening. And it does present a kind of a unique, I think, American problem, perhaps, that we do have so many different factions in certain different populations because maybe due to population shifts in the U.S. are now kind of having to meet other people, whereas previously these topics might not have come up in their particular population.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. So let me try and just, one of the things is recognizing a distinction between constitutional rights that are federal that should be applying to everybody, right? Because they're in the Constitution, they're in the Bill of Rights. Okay, and electoral majorities don't get to screw with those things. You can win elections, but you don't get to screw around with things in the Bill of Rights. So it's now, and then interpreting what those rights happen to be, how you sort of translate the Bill of Rights into practice. Well, that's going to be up to the courts, and then you have situations where Supreme Court at one point legalizes slavery. Be it Dred Scott. And there's change over time as there's a better understanding of the meaning of that. We have the same kind of thing with abortion rulings, that you get different kinds of rulings at different points in time. But it's all rooted in, God we hope, it's rooted in an attempt to be faithful to the Bill of Rights, right? Rather than responding to electoral majorities. That is one of the things that is one of those dangerous things, and you see it right now. Whenever folks are challenged about the kinds of things that are being done right now, they're going, well, Trump won a majority. We're going to put his program into effect. Well, if those actions violate the Constitution, you don't get to say that. That is a non sequitur. That does not follow. And it's really important to keep those things, at least an idea of a distinction in place, to not ignore it, recognize that it's there. It's often problematic to see just where in the world it is. Where are those rights? How do we understand those rights? And Therese, forgive me, but I'm gonna jump to something else because it's gonna connect it, and then I'll come back to some of the other stuff that's there. I think that's what Carrie is talking about. That there needs to be some kind of idea of fraternity, so that when we are making those decisions, we actually care about our fellow citizens. That we don't stigmatize them, that we don't treat them as evil, that we don't treat them in the ways that the moral majority was treating them. I think that's one of those things that Kerry was looking for, he had in mind, he believed were an important part of the organic Constitution that would keep the formal Constitution operating the way that it should. And it's related to the stuff, when Laura was talking about individualism, it's related to that. If you're driving people apart, or if you're treating some folks as sinners, you're not going to have those conversations about rights in a meaningful way, because you're treating those individuals as less human. They're not, in a sense, they're not even full citizens, right? Shoot, Wendy.
It just reminds me, so a billion years ago, I worked at Planned Parenthood, and the elevator speech that I always used is that as for the pro-choice side, pro-choice argument allows the other side to have their position, but the anti-choice position does not allow me to have mine. It's not as if, as a pro-choice person, I'm running around forcing people to have abortions. But the anti-choice side is telling me that even if my moral code feels like it's okay for me to make that decision for myself, for my family, for my health, whatever it is, that I should not have that right. And I think that is kind of what you're talking about. Like, I'm not, the pro-choice
yeah.
isn't stigmatizing people who don't want to make that choice. That's the whole point of the pro-choice movement, is to give everyone the ability to choose for themselves. But the anti-choice side of things is telling me that I don't have that right. And
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing, this isn't a unique thing with fundamentalist Protestants wanting to rule. I'm sorry, I'm going to be flippant about it. It's not, fundamentalist Protestants aren't the only ones that want to rule the world. But that's certainly the kind of thing that the Constitution made pretty clear we shouldn't be doing, because there wasn't supposed to be an establishment of religion. You're not looking to have the government support any religion at all. It should be allowing you to do whatever you would like in terms of your practice of religion. But the notion that the government would place its imprimatur on any particular religion, and honestly, part of this is myopia on the part of Americans generally. I mean, we don't really think about, folks think they're being tolerant when they acknowledge, well, there's Christianity, there's Judaism. Well, there are lots of other religious groups that are out there. If you're not even recognizing that they exist, then you're blind to the fact that some things that you do could be violating those folks' religious code. We do it all, as Americans, we do it all the time, don't we? All the time. And that's that danger, where you just don't even think about people who are different from you. And again,
Don't you know America's the best? We're the best. We're the leaders. We should be doing them. We do everything right. Don't you know this already?
yeah.
Hopefully the sarcasm came through. But.
That's okay. That's how the UK got Brexit. We don't need anybody else. We're bigger and better than.
And look how well that's going for
Yeah,
them.
that's my point, Laura. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that kind of good? We've been on for like an hour and a quarter, sort of an hour and a quarter. Thanks to Wendy. Thank you.
no problem.
Thank you much. Anything else you want to drop in there, or?
I said I could talk about this all night, so I'm going to keep my mouth shut in case someone else wants to say something.
Ditto.
Well, next week is nationalism.
Oh,
Like a national.
that'll be interesting.
Well, and
That's truly where I feel like we are right now. This idea of nationalism and what it means.
Yes. Yeah. And you know what? I'm going to give you a homework assignment.
Oh God. Okay.
Look at video from the 1984 Olympics. LA.
Okay.
Mary Lou
Make
Retton.
sure. Make
Don't
sure
do
you put that in.
You clowns did Mary Lou Retton before. It's not that. It's all the pageantry, and do a little background stuff on the Olympics.
But that's what I remember from the 1980s.
I know. You need to get beyond this stuff.
Will you talk about during that? Next week? Will you touch on the idea of how we've politicized the American flag with nationalism? Or will that not be something? Is that too new?
John Prine.
I just think it's interesting, right? I mean, it has become this political symbol of,
Yeah.
and so somehow I can't, if I fly an American flag, what does that mean? And who
Yeah.
am I ticking off, and and it's like, well,
So
I
nobody
don't-
got
it's just,
nobody got my musical reference.
sorry.
Jody got it. Jody got it. Yeah.
But you know
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
along
And
those
then-
same
and
lines,
then-
Laura,
I'm sorry?
I said along the same lines as Laura was talking about the flag, and this is probably not exactly the same thing, this is just the way my weird brain works. The whole idea of the national anthem
Yeah, that's
being like at the start of all sporting events, like that was never a thing until like the 80s also, and then it turned sporting events into
Yeah.
almost this political thing. So when you then jump ahead a few decades to like the Kaepernick issue and that, like
right.
it created that whole thing, even though there's really no basis for turning sporting events. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Yankee fan, but I don't feel like, sorry, I'm from New Jersey, man.
So
But
I'm
you know-
gonna
He's
def-
in New Jersey.
yeah.
Where in New Jersey are you?
Short Hills, Millburn.
Oh, I'm from Parsippany.
Yeah, you're 15 minutes away.
Yeah, very close.
You could have come on over.
Right up. I'm actually in Chicago right now. Right up 24.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So your homework is to listen to the John Prine song. And the John Prine song is
You're asking me which one of his songs?
that title. Oh, God, I was counting on it.
America, we're talking, which one? The one about the drug addict?
Sure. It's like the cow won't get you there anymore.
Oh, right. Yeah, I don't know that. Sorry, guys, I failed.
What's it called?
The key line is your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore.
Ah.
And then I want you to recognize the date at which he records this before you start thinking this all got started with Reagan.
Oh,
And
okay.
John Prine, and none of you clowns know John Prine either, do you? Anybody? Oh, God bless you.
Leslie's
From
nodding.
Montgomery, you've heard that song. Bonnie Raitt did it.
Which song?
Angel from Montgomery.
No, but I'll look it up.
John Prine is one of the most important American songwriters. Really, really, really important. You should absolutely, but listen to the song. It's, there's something in the title about your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore. You ought to take a look at that.
Your flag decal. Okay.
Yeah.
I kept thinking you were saying the cow. Like, moo.
Oh.
I was like, you're not. I was like, what? The flag decal will not. Got you. I'm making myself a note.
Oh, I thought you were actually doing a little search for it right now.
Oh, I could, but I was just making myself a little note so I could look it up. That and the 1984 Olympics. I'm doing my homework.
There you go. So take a look at those, and you'll get. I think the 1984 Olympics. Do you remember the name of the guy? No. Who produced the Olympics was a big, like Hollywood producer guy that did just completely overblown. Michael might know.
He probably would. Michael.
Michael.
Yeah, yes, dear.
We're calling in the troops.
Yes, dear.
1984 LA
George
Olympics.
Orwell. No, thank you.
I was just kidding. Just kidding.
All the
Don't pay me no mind.
all the siblings are assholes like this.
David Wolper.
Pardon?
David
Peter
Wolper.
I have-
Wolper.
That sounds right. Who set up the LA Olympics?
That's what AI told me.
Oh,
I think
David
that's it. It's
Wolper, yep.
David Wolper.
Wolper,
Yeah.
yeah, Wolper.
Yeah.
Noted producer,
Wolper.
There you go.
All right.
entertainment industry icon.
That was it. And the actual title of the John Prine song about your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore.
John Prine.
He's cheating, looking it up.
Your
He's
flag
doing
decal will get you into
Just that, okay, so there you go.
Your flag.
All right.
No, we'll get it.
Pat, it looks like you're having a party there.
It's an old person's party.
Yeah.
You drink some of your beer?
I didn't bring the beer out from Indiana. For one thing, these aren't. I don't know if Michael is.
I'm not.
Yeah, they're not really beer drinkers.
All right, you're gonna save it.
Aaron would have had a beer. Aaron would have had a
Do you
beer.
have any art questions?
I'm glad you moved because I was done. It says yield to the what, but now you've moved so I can see it.
Art. Art.
So this
I
was
like it.
designed in the basement of the Metropolitan Museum, and whenever art got unloaded on the loading dock and was going through the basement, we call them the tunnels, there were these big orange signs with black lettering that said, "Yield to the art."
I kind of love that.
You had to get out of the way, you know?
I like that.
Yeah.
The art.
Well, and Pat's wearing one that says I'm a professor.
Yeah, you.
Oh, I didn't know what it said. Okay.
Wait, keep talking, Pat, so you can come up on the screen.
I got it, I got it.
Just assume that I'm never wrong.
Mirror
No,
image.
there you go.
Yeah.
I like it.
It's not doing
I
it,
like
is
that.
it?
No, I got
Can you
it.
read it backwards?
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
backwards.
It's
Not
not
mine
backwards.
anyway.
Okay. Yeah, but
I'm
they're
a
seeing it-
professor.
they're
At the
seeing it
same
the right
time,
way.
let's just assume that I am never wrong.
I like it.
And
That
I
was
like
what
the
it was
yield
like
to
growing
the
up with
art.
two teachers as parents, by the way.
I wore it into class a couple of times.
That was a mistake.
What are they gonna do? Walk out? All right. Enough of this frivolity. We'll leave it at that. We'll have a more coherent and fully recorded session next week. I'll be back home again in
And I
Indiana.
won't be here.
Yeah, we'll miss out on the.
We liked having you in class.
Pardon?
Peanut gallery.
I said we liked having him in class.
I'll come visit you in Short Hills.
Thank you, too.
Or if you're ever in Charlotte, stop by.
Ooh, all right.
That's way farther away.
I know.
She doesn't participate.
Oh, really? I'm sorry.
That was me. I'm just
All right. Wendy.
You guys go have fun.
Thanks again.
You're very
And
welcome. I will
you
send
have
you the
that?
link once I figure out where it is.
Terrific. All righty. Thanks, guys. Take care. It was lovely
Bye,
seeing you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.